My lords, today I bring report of a bizarre and concerning nature. Two events have occurred since last we met, and it remains unclear if they're linked, but both may have profound implications on the Commonwealth of Man. The first event concerns exploration of an astral rift, where we appear to have come into contact with, frankly, what can only be described as some sort of deity, or at least some sort of incredibly powerful psionic entity. The second, as I'm sure some of you will be aware of already, was the coming of the many Tentacled One. I shall detail both reports for you now and begin with the exploration of the rift, codenamed Whiteout. Dr. Banks reports on this exploration. Outside the sphere, there was nothing but white. Initial readings indicate that an equal amount of every colour on the spectrum was bombarding us from every direction at once. We have no way to determine our bearings. Alternators, depth gauges and compasses are completely inoperable or clearly in error. Visually, there is absolutely no deviation from the empty whiteness surrounding us. Perhaps if we travel far enough, we could escape disruption. Alternatively, we could explore the area in more detail with the help of a drone. I felt the second option was better, and thus I ordered a drone to be released. There was no point in pushing forward without a heading. For now at least. The drone gave us a different perspective on our situation. After orbiting our vessel in concentric circles, we discovered a curved black wall not far from our location. The readings were somewhat puzzling, however, as the height of the wall always returned an equal distance to the exact altitude of the drone. Observing this phenomenon has furthered our understanding of non-standard spatial dimensions, but we remain without bearing or heading, and thus our scans continue. Several hours have now passed, and we have a new development. A new series of walls has appeared directly in front of us, and we are maintaining a safe distance, lest one of these objects materialized straight through the vessel. Perhaps by sampling the material, we may further understand the current situation. Alternatively, we could take some time to map out the shapes of the walls and detect if there was any kind of pattern. Given that scanning had so far proved fruitless, I ordered a sample be collected. Thus, we extended our retrieval arm and gathered a sample of the dark material from the wall. We were quite surprised to find that the sample maintained an infinite height as we pulled it free to analyze it. Its properties have much in common with ink or paint, although some of the components of the pigment are of an unknown type. Some of the binding agents used in the ink are actually a unique form of dissolved crystal. As an experiment, we drew a line using a small amount of the sample, and we waited. A short time later, a nearly identical mark appeared parallel to it. We repeated the action several times, each with a different amount of material, iterating through several different designs. Each time the mark was reproduced exactly the same, and in the same orientation. Given the results, there is reason to believe that some sort of entity is making use of the material in an attempt to communicate with us. Accordingly, we have begun writing some basic phrases in binary using small dots and dashes. These were copied exactly, but there was also something new. Next to each of our words appeared a pattern. Each time we drew the same phrase, the same pattern appeared, and we wondered, was this a translation? Many weeks have now passed, and we remain in the rift. Over that time, we have learned to communicate in a stunted fashion with the entity who we have nicknamed the Writer. The exchange has been difficult, but the writer's tone evokes a curiosity and a surprise. So as not to clutter our immediate area, it has become routine that each of the symbols painted by the writer are erased after each dialogue. Our conversation with the writer continued for some time until a final word appeared, which read simply as gift. Soon after, a golden sphere appeared next to our vessel. The object behaved very differently to the previous symbols, and we were able to bring it aboard. This was the last communication that we received from the entity. The sphere's component materials contained rich amounts of data that will take our science teams years to fully understand, but a cursory analysis suggests that this will push forward our physics research by at least a decade. Most Astral Rift encounters are peculiar, my lords, but this one particularly so. However, barely a Terran week had passed before we were again dealing with the unknown. It remains unclear whether these two events are linked, This event has been codenamed simply The Guest, and Dr. Barrett reports. The appearance of a building-sized tentacled monstrosity in the midst of Erebidar, the capital world of the Stellaris system, has quite obviously thrown the capital into chaos. The creature seems just as confused as we are by its sudden appearance, and appears fairly docile. It has allowed itself to be restrained without resistance. Many of our scientists claim the creature, codenamed the Guest, somewhat obviously to be of an alien nature. Others have suggested it could be a previously unknown species which until now has grown undiscovered. After all, no alien ship was detected in orbit, and the creature simply materialized out of nowhere, seemingly unassisted by technology. Although how we could have missed a tentacled, building-sized alien in the middle of the capital remains unclear. Nevertheless, we also wonder if it could be related to the still classified Writer Astral Rift Event. Despite the creature being incredibly large, it is totally docile and has allowed us to move it into a research facility. As stated, it appears just as confused as we are. This may be a trick, but so far, it doesn't appear so. Translation attempts began immediately, and our science teams determined that the wriggling tentacle motions of our guest are a form of sophisticated sign language. To our dismay, we thus learn that the creature is embarrassed about its lack of clothing and has been repeatedly asking for appropriate garments to cover its naked appendages. We were soon able to supply it with some suitably large sheets. After the creature was suitably clad, our researchers proposed the construction of a many-tentacled machine to better aid communication with the creature. We will essentially make an artificial version of itself in order to mimic the tentacle waving. After construction of the translation device was completed, it would appear that our guest is very talkative. Cultural differences are making it hard for us to understand one another, but we know the creature is female and refers to herself as the Many-Tentacled One. She seems to be a member of a spiritual order called the Veilfarers, and she continues to mention something called the Jaunt. She keeps mentioning it to us and seems to be referring to the fact that it's responsible for her sudden appearance. Our communication efforts continue. Weeks have now passed. The creature remains inside our research facility, secured, but appearing to be quite happy. Our researchers have finally pieced together the Many-Tentacled One's story. Our guest is the head of a spiritual order focused on studying the Jaunt, a psionic technique that allows for instantaneous teleportation anywhere in the universe. Throughout the history of her species, no one has ever managed to perform a Jaunt until now. It occurs to me that this is remarkably similar to how the Zeroni used to teleport themselves across the physical universe. Sadly, she has no idea who the Zeroni are. The Many-Tentacled One is unsure about her ability to replicate the Jaunt, and her energy reserves are currently too depleted to make another attempt. For now, she would like to remain in our care and will repay our apparent hospitality by aiding our research team. We of course agreed that she could stay, but we suggested it would be best if she stayed within the research facility. Oddly, she appears to have no issue with this arrangement. It is a fortunate position indeed. It's been a year now, and some of our scientists have expressed an interest in attempting to learn the Jaunt, the teleportation technique used by the Many-Tentacled One to reach our world. The spacefaring mystic was willing to share her knowledge, though she doubts that we will be able to replicate the technique. A suitable wing of the lab has been converted for this purpose. It's taken us months, but here is what we learned after perfecting the Jaunt. It's completely useless. Our researchers could spend decades learning to master the technique, only to die on their first Jaunt when they materialize inside a rock, a star, or a black hole event horizon. It's simply too imprecise to work. The more we attempt to Jaunt, the clearer it becomes that the arrival of the Many-Tentacled One was a stroke of luck. Now we have more details about the Writer Rift site, we've subtly probed her with questions about it, and it became clear quite quickly that, like the Zeroni, she had no idea what we were talking about, and the two events are unfortunately entirely unrelated. I have no doubt that she is telling us all that she knows, as recently she has expressed a genuine desire to return home. I feel no malice whatsoever from this creature, and despite my people's inherent distrust of the alien, and our general xenophobia, I've come to enjoy this creature's company. I am sad, however, to say that our efforts to locate her home system have proven fruitless. The celestial features she described do not correspond to any part of the known galaxy. Nevertheless, our guest's gaze remains fixed on the night sky, for now. I report today that the many-tentacled one is nowhere to be found. The creature disappeared just as abruptly as she appeared, but she did leave a hastily scratched goodbye message on the floor of the research facility, which reads, "I'm scared, but I have to jaunt. My heart ached with the thoughts of home. Thank you for everything. I pray the veil will be kind to me." And that, my lords, was the last we saw of the many-tentacled one, who really, given the time she spent with us, we probably should have named her. Yesterday, however, one of our ships intercepted a cache that suddenly materialized in the Stellaris system. The complex lock gave way as soon as a member of our species touched it, and it revealed a dizzying collection of artifacts, and a thank you note from the many-tentacled traveller, who claims to have visited our home planet decades ago. Clearly she made it somewhere safe, and we wonder, will she return one day?